Lounge with Travefy Academy, where we get to hear from travel industry voices and experts to learn more about their story and also see what they're on the horizon for travel professionals. And I'm Stephanie Grice, and our guest today is Sandra McLemore, who is founder and CEO of Travel Marketing and Media. So welcome to the lounge, Sandra. We're so excited to have you.
Yay! I do a Mexican wave for myself in the audience.
Yes, I love it. So for those of you who are watching on YouTube, you can see us all in here, having a great time. But this is so exciting. I'm really, really excited to have you on the podcast today because this episode is so timely because as we're entering this new year, travel advisors everywhere are just setting up their goals for the new year, implementing them and excited. But there's always you have to make sure those goals are aligned, which is about the chat we're going to have today. So this really couldn't have come at a better time. So this is exciting.
Yes, I'm super excited, and I'm actually really nervous because for people who have followed my career and who know me, I am a television host. So to know that this is a podcast makes me feel like I'm in a room by myself. So I'm glad that you're with me.
I know, it's really cool. Well, and we'll talk about this at the end, but we're also going to get to chat with you again next week when you are on a live one. So it'll be like kind of more like a news. So yeah. This is kind of like our little extra bonus that we get, which is really exciting. So really cool. Well, first, what I want to do is I just want to ask more, can you share more about you and just how did you find yourself in the travel industry?
Yes, I have been in the travel. The funny thing is I've been telling people the wrong information for the last 6 years because my math was never good. It was like never correct. It didn't add up. And so and nobody ever called me out. I was giving the right year. I was saying I started in the travel industry in 1998 and I've been in it for 22 years. So I've been saying 22 for the last 3 years, not thinking to up at one. And so now when I sit down and do the math, I'm really excited because on December 9, that made 25 years that I've been in the travel industry. And I now have a diary note on the 9th of December every year, add one more year to whatever stage or camera kind of interview I'm doing. So it's now been 25 years. My first job, travel advisors would be so excited to know, was a travel advisor. So I started in the industry as a travel advisor. And for those of you who have been in it for a long time, you'll know that I'm going to date myself now even more with the experience. I used to work inside of a branch of STA Travel, and we would receive marketing posters every week on a Monday morning or a Friday afternoon, and you'd put them up in the window and they would have all of the specials for the week. So it'd be like Johannesburg, $1,200, London, $1,800. And that's how we would market our flight specials. They would hang in the window, and at the bottom in tiny print, it would say, seat pending availability. And we didn't check email back then either. We would come in and check our Sabre queues to make sure that everything was done. So I had a really great career with STA Travel, and I moved, at that time I was in Australia, and I moved to London, and I spent several years in London at their head office, and then moved up through the ranks there as well. So I learned about airline airfare product negotiation, tour operators, marketing, PR, really got into all areas behind the scenes in travel. Then I went to the cruise line industry where I was for 12 years. I jumped out and had a little break during those 12 years. I went to Travel Channel, but stayed in the cruise line industry and worked my way up to VP level. So I started on cruise ships finding lost luggage for passengers, and I worked in guest services, and then that very quickly wore thin. So I moved downstairs to the crew office where I would look after the crew and realized y'all are just like passengers but downstairs. So then I ended up moving into the shoreside office for Royal Caribbean at the time, and I was the senior fleet revenue manager for Royal Caribbean, which so many people don't know because I don't really talk about it, but I was responsible for making sure that every ship in the entire fleet made their sales targets, marketed and made their revenue every single week. So think about everything from shore excursions to bar to the shops on board, the spa on board, the casino. I ran 24 casinos. Like I'd never played in a casino before. And it was while I was doing this that I actually got introduced to the Travel Channel, because one of the areas I was responsible for, I mentioned, was shore excursions. And I just couldn't figure out how to sell more excursions on board. People would come on board already with a clear idea of what they wanted to do. So I grabbed the broadcast manager on board. He's the guy that videos the belly flop competition and then puts together the cruise and review video. And I said, come with me, we're going to go outside, we're going to make a video on what everybody can do on the next time that we come to Los Cabos, and we're going to replay it every single week from the beginning of the cruise and see if it doesn't help us sell more shore excursion tickets. Well, did we not stumble on gold, like jackpot gold? We increased shore excursion sales immediately the first week by 400%, then 600%, then 1,000%. And the next thing we knew, we were rolling out the travel channel across a bunch of different ships for shore excursions. And then the next cruise department started doing it for the next cruise as well. So it was really the birth of the in-house travel channel. And while I was on board doing that, I ended up recording 140 ports of call for Royal Caribbean at their film studio in Miami. And when I was on board, the Travel Channel found me and literally poached me from Royal Caribbean. So I went with them for ages. I was really lucky to be mentored directly by Anthony Bourdain and to travel with him. And then I said I would never have a career in television, but I married a television producer, and that all changed. So now, fast forward, I help tens of thousands of travel advisors around the world, mostly North America, get a consistent stream of new clients. I figured, like, what could I bring from my past experience, like kind of Slumdog Millionaire moment, like what one thing would be so helpful for travel advisors? And it was what I did for the cruise lines. It was to market and get more revenue. So that's what we do now. And I founded Travel Marketing and Media. It's about to be 7 years old, and we have literally worked, right now we're working with 42,000 travel advisors, mostly in North America. And I just love it because travel advisors, and I think the audience today might be able to resonate with this, you probably didn't have career goals of becoming a travel advisor. Probably what happened, like wedding planners, is that you organized a vacation, like they organized a wedding, and someone turned around to you or multiple people and said, Stephanie, you're so good at this. You should do this for a living. And that was the beginning of your travel industry career. But you didn't go to business school. You didn't go to marketing school. You were never a sales manager. You were never responsible for a fleet of like floating resorts. So what are you going to do? And so that seemed to be a really great bridge for me to be able to join like those two, the position and the problem. And so that's really all we do. And we do it through content and community and coaching. And funny enough, my TV career came back in full swing a few years ago. And so now I do up to 5 or 6 segments per week on national news and talk shows and morning shows. Of course, I'm the biggest advocate of using a travel advisor. So even when a producer doesn't ask me, I always throw it in. Hope it won't get cut. But I'm basically a producer pick for anything travel related. So I balance. I juggle between filming pilots for travel shows and doing news and then running travel marketing and media. Was that a good summary?
Oh, it's so awesome. It is such a cool story. Like when we first talked, I was like, whoa, that is so cool. And I do have to say, it's really incredible how you balance it all and you give back to travel advisors, because you have so much expert knowledge that you're helping the travel advisors and knowing how important it is. So that's really cool. And I know the travel advisors listening are like, thank you for giving us this information.
Well, you know what's so important to me? When I was growing my business, I didn't have anyone in my friend circle or my family circle that was an entrepreneur. Like I just didn't have that because it was actually never my dream. I never sat in corporate America and thought one day I'm going to bust out of here and be an entrepreneur. It wasn't my dream. It was literally just a few life-changing situations that put me in a situation where I needed to start my own business. And so I remember as I was growing travel marketing and media, throwing spaghetti at the wall and just like trying anything and everything. And I was so frustrated because I would try so many things and then find something that someone else had done and try that and think, God, I wish I'd have known about that in the beginning. And so one of the things that I've always told our community at TMM is I will never teach you anything that I haven't done myself and got results with. And I think that that's the biggest, it's the biggest thing the biggest gift that I can bring to travel advisors. I did sell travel. I've sold travel for the biggest companies in the world, for the biggest global travel brands, but I also built a business. So I know exactly what it feels like to be currently dressed from the waist down in pajamas and balancing that schedule. And I'm a mom and I'm a wife and I have a home to look after and all the things that you have, but I'll never coach things that I didn't do myself. I just wish that I'd have found someone who could have helped me in what I do when I was starting my business, because I started my business with $40. That's all I started it with. I bought a domain and a month of hosting. So I'm so excited today that we're going to share things that I wish that I'd have known. It took me literally 5 or 6 years to learn these things today.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, thank you for jumpstarting everyone here. Getting 5, 6 years ahead of this, which is so cool. And going into that, so I know that big, like especially in the beginning of the year, and I know it's really busy for travel right now too. These next few months, so it's easy to feel overwhelmed. So we will talk about that. But before we talk about that, I want to talk about goal setting. So specifically sales goals, which is at the end of the day, pretty much the most important thing. So what would you say is the biggest mistake that travel advisors make when just setting their goals for the year?
I love this question because travel advisors don't like the answer, but then they resonate it when they hear it. Travel advisors do not, generally speaking, do a good job of goal setting. And despite the fact that they don't want to live paycheck to paycheck, they actually live client to client, which is exactly the same as living paycheck to paycheck. Because when you live client to client, that's the feeling like this is you if you are not quite sure when your next client's going to come. You don't know what kind of request they're going to bring to you, what kind of travel they're going to want to do. You have no idea if you're going to be comfortable with that request. You don't know how long it's going to be between clients. You don't know how much your next client is going to spend. It could be a 10,000, a 50,000, or a 2,000. It could be domestic flights. Like you just don't know. And if that's you, if you resonate with any of those things, you live client to client, which is the equivalent of living paycheck to paycheck. And if we ask travel advisors, hey, who wants to live paycheck to paycheck? Nobody is going to raise their hand. And so it's not surprising to me that the reason that travel advisors live client to client is because they don't have their sales goals mapped out and then they don't have a way to get there. It's kind of like putting in an address into Google Maps and then having a step-by-step directions to get there. Travel advisors say, it would be so nice if I ended up on Smith Street by the Vista overlooking the city. But I'm just going to do my best and see where I end up. Can you imagine? Like, can you imagine getting into your car and thinking, it'd be great if I ended up in this and say, I'm just going to drive. I'm just going to see where I get to and I'll do my best. And wherever I land, as long as I know that I've done my best, that's all that matters. What about instead saying, I need to go to Smith Street. I want to end up where the view is on the side of the mountain overlooking the city. So I'm going to map out all of the streets that I need to drive on to get there, how long it's going to take me, how much gas I'm going to need, what time I need, how long I can stay there, what time I need to come back. Like you would map it all out, especially if you live like where you and I do in big cities, Chicago and LA, with terrible traffic, because the traffic are your obstacles that'll get thrown to you during the year. But so many travel advisors just say, you know what, I'm going to aim for Smith Street and do my best. And that's all I can really do.
That's such a good way to look at it. Oh my gosh, it makes so much sense because you got the gas, the money, you have all the obstacles, the traffic. And I love that analogy. That's really good. And so on that, then what would you say is like, what's the best advice for getting, how do you map that out? Like where do you begin to map that out?
Yeah. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to decide that you're going to Smith Street. And Smith Street in money terms is how much money you need to make. But let's be super clear. We always hear, and I get this is kind of like a little thing that I have with the travel industry that I don't like, is I hear a lot about talking about 6-figure businesses and 7-figure businesses. If you're counting your sales, you're never going to really know how much money you have. So you absolutely need to count your sales or your revenue, the fancy word for sales, but you really need to be looking at your profit. That's how much money you have left over after you've paid all your bills. And there are two kinds of bills in this world. There are personal bills if you're an entrepreneur, and they're the things that keep your life going. And then there's your business bills. So it's about sitting down and emptying out the receipts on the bottom of the purse, printing out all the bank statements, pulling out your tax for the last 2 or 3 years, and even especially going back to a year pre-COVID as well, pre-pandemic, and asking yourself, how much does my business actually cost to run? And then, Stephanie, how much would I like it to cost? Because there's a big difference between how much you spent in one of your growing years and how much you'd like to spend. Because if I ask any travel advisor, Of course, they'd like to upgrade their computer every couple of years. Of course, they'd like to go on 2 or 3 more fam trips or any fam trips. Of course, they want to go to that amazing conference in San Juan. Like they want to do all these things. So don't just look at what you spent in 2019 or 2022. Look at what you would like to spend across the year. And then the same in your personal life as well. How much did it cost to send your kids to school that year, do your groceries, run your car, gas, mortgage, rent, all the things? Because that's going to give you the total amount of sales that you have to make to cover that. But more importantly, the profit that you have to make when all of that is paid for. And it is the scariest exercise that you can ever do because many of us realize how much money we're wasting. We do this exercise in our family every November where we sit down and we look at our cell phone, our car insurance, everything. We shaved $2,400 off of our family bills when we looked at it in November just by switching vendors and providers. And the same thing needs to be done in your business. Sit down, look at your expenses, look at your personal life, and then work out, gosh, I want to sell Disney cruises. And on an average of 10% of commission, by the time I pay for all my expenses, this is what I've got left or what I don't have left. Or I want to sell river cruises and I'll be getting around 18% commission. So not only do I know how much in river cruises I have to sell, but if the average river cruise ticket is $3,500, I now know how many people I need to sell to go on a river cruise. So I think that that clarity is something that I would say literally 99% of travel advisors do not have, because they're going to just say, you know what, I'm not going to use a GPS. I'm not going to plan this out. I'm just going to do my best and hope I end up at Smith Street. Hope I hit my numbers.
It's so true. So true. Especially for travel advisors starting out or doing it just on a part-time thing where, it's all the time. It's that you have to treat it as a business, and a business can't just just do whatever they want, hope they land in the right spot. So
Yep.
it's so true, so true. And so once a travel advisor is clear on what they have to sell and like how much of it, that I know is probably in the process of this where the overwhelm sets in. So what's great is that we have you here today to give 5 great tips to reduce that overwhelm and just staying in alignment throughout the year. So to go into the first one, that's unsubscribing. So what does that mean? Unsubscribing.
Yes. So unsubscribing is my very, very first tip for reducing the overwhelm, getting rid of a lot of the noise. And really, like when you sit down, trust me, when you sit down and you do that numbers exercise and you figure out like, whoa, I need to sell how many? That is when a deep level of overwhelm and fear is going to set in. And most likely, most people will just close it and walk away. But you have to face it head on. And these tips that we're going to give now, just to be clear, are things that you can do immediately for free in your business that will help you to just lower that panic level and get working. So the first thing you said was unsubscribe. This is my favorite thing in the world. I do this on a personal note and I do this in my business as well. But in your travel business, you really don't need to be working with 10, 20, 30 different suppliers. You don't need to be taking all the trainings of all the travel suppliers. If you know what your niche is, the type of travel you want to specialize in, and you know the type of person that you want to work with. So say, for example, you said, I just want to do cruising. I want to do ocean cruising. I want to do river cruising. I want to do tall ships. And I know that I want to work with affluent travelers because I want to sell luxury end of those. And I want to work with people who are super interested in discovering like off the beaten path kind of destinations and really just getting in and having authentic experiences there. Great. You might know all of that about your business, and most travel advisors do know that. But what they then do is they then subscribe to every travel supplier. Like, why are you looking at Nickelodeon Resort's new training when you've decided that you're going to specialize in cruising? Or why are you taking that sandals training? And no hate on sandals, I love sandals, but why are you taking that sandals training academy that's going to take you like a month and then so that you can get a trip down to sandals? No, girl, that's your vacation. That's different. Like, put that to the side. That's not going to help you to get to your goal. So one of the things that I tell travel advisors is create a list of 6 to 10 focused suppliers. Notice that I don't say preferred suppliers. Preferred suppliers is a term used by host agency and consortia for their community of suppliers that they would love you to work with, and for good reason. They have great partnerships with them. They get you great commission. They've got great working relationships. But what are your focused list of suppliers that you need to subscribe to so that you can get to your goal? So that cruise example, let's say maybe you take celebrity, Virgin Voyages, Avalon, Armour Waterways, and then maybe like a big one like I don't know, like a Royal Caribbean or something like that. And you say, you know what? I've got all my itineraries around the world covered with these cruise lines. Or maybe you'll add Polka again as well for the South Pacific. And you say, I've got all my regions of the world covered. I've got my rivers covered, my oceans covered, my Norwegian fjords covered, everything. I can now unsubscribe to everything else. And that doesn't mean that you can't go find that information from Turks and Caicos Tourism Board because one of your regular cruises now wants to go to Turks and Caicos for the week. It means that you then go and call your T&C BDM, Business Development Manager, and say, hey, I usually sell cruising, luxury cruising, and I just got a request from one of my regular clients. Can you update me on what's new? Or you go to the website and get updated. But unsubscribe to everybody who is not on that focus list of 6 suppliers, maximum 10. You really don't even need that many, because the minute that you clear your inbox, you can clear your mind. I cannot work on a messy desk because it's just frustrating for me. I can't live in a chaotic house. I'm that person that's got to get unpacked when I move, like as soon as possible, because it causes chaos, and chaos doesn't lead to productivity. So if you're the same, clearing your inbox, unsubscribing from everything that you don't need to run your business is a super good idea. And also turning off it's kind of comes under the unsubscribe category, Stephanie, but notifications. I took Facebook and Instagram off my phone, and I don't have them on my phone. I turned off the notifications. I really don't need to be notified when there's a new TikTok dance. I really don't. It's not in alignment with what I'm doing. So unsubscribing is the most empowering thing. And I did it in my personal email, and then I did it in my business email.
I love that. Oh, it is empowering, and it's something you can just go do, and I like how it's structured, how for those listening, can you find what are your goals? Okay, now how does that align? Now, those, like you said, the Nickelodeon resort, that is not going to work with your goal. So get rid of it. Get rid of it. So I love that. It's really cool. So the second tip that you have is reverse engineering your numbers. Now, I'm curious about this. Can you tell us more about that? What does that mean?
Yeah, so I kind of already touched on it a little bit, but you've got this one number, and it might be that you need $120,000 of profit per year. So that's going to give you whatever revenue number, and who knows, because all the commission levels determine what your revenue would have been, and then we remove your expenses. Reverse engineering is taking the profit number. So you need 120,000 of profit. It's taking that profit number and saying, well, okay, I've got 6 suppliers, Stephanie. I've got Celebrity, I've got Norwegian, I've got Avalon, I've got Ama, and I've got Polk again. And then finding out, because it's shocking the number of travel advisors that don't know this. And if this is you listening, I'm not here to chastise you, but I'm here to give you a swift loving kick in the behind. Because if you don't know immediately the commission rates that those 6 suppliers pay, how on earth are you going to get to Smith Street? Like, really, how are you going to reach your numbers? So reverse engineering is about taking that profit number, that profit amount you want to pay yourself, and saying, okay, so I know who my 6 suppliers are. What is the actual commission? So if you don't know, go to your host agency. Your host agency will be able to tell you. Go to your host agency. And if you're not part of a host agency or consortia, this is why you need to be part of one or both. And that's a whole different episode, and probably for a different expert. But figuring out how many things that you have to sell, like how many people do you actually have to send to a Disney theme park? How many people do you actually have to send on a river cruise? And it's taking that average fair basis. So we know that all river cruise cabins are not exactly the same price. You'll have beautiful suites, penthouse-esque suites that are very different to the standard cabin. And so it's just about finding that average amount, knowing the commission rate, and then being able to say, right, that actually is going to tell me how many people I have to sell. Now, for our experienced travel advisors listening, you're like, this is so basic, Sandra. Okay, let's go experienced travel advisors then. So you might know, and you might have always known, I need to sell X number of people on this river cruise, X number of people on this ocean cruise. Do you know your numbers when it comes to your conversion? So how many people on your email list does it take to equal X number of proposals? that you generate, or X number of leads that are requested. So if you have 8,000 people, and we did this exercise recently and it was mind blowing. We did it last week. At any given time on one of our email lists, we have 8,000 people. And we were doing blogs on our website that were getting around a 20% open rate. So people be like, oh, that's really great, 20% open, but we were only getting a 5% click rate, which is really low. So total, like 120 people were opening the article, and who knows if they were even reading it. We then switched to video, where we were getting 1,200 travel advisors watched our video every single week out of this list, this specific list. And we thought, oh my gosh, that's amazing. So we quit doing the weekly blogs. We put up some good content on our website, but we really focused on our weekly video. And so then we thought, oh, you know what? Let's try podcasting, because I just had a baby at the time and I could batch create my episodes. And so we moved away from video and we started podcasting. Podcasting, we get around 2,000 to 3,000 listeners every single week out of the 8,000 people who are on our list. And I was like, what? The numbers tell you everything. From those 8,000 people, we then looked and said, well, how many of those people are actually members in our community, monthly members for their content creation and coaching? Wow, 5% of that particular list. So if you are a seasoned travel advisor and you know your revenue numbers and your profit numbers, let me push you to get in and to learn, how many people do I need to have on my email list to generate X number of inquiries? How many of those inquiries are actually turning into calls? How many of those calls are turning into proposals that I'll create in Travefy? And then how many of those proposals are actually closing in sales? Because you might say, well, I did everything I could last year, and you had an email list of maybe 1,000 or 1,500 people and you got X number of sales. The math will tell you, hey, girl, but if you increase your email list from 1,500 to 3,000, technically your number of proposals, leads should increase, proposals should increase, and sales should increase. So that's what we mean by reverse engineering the numbers. It's really going backwards and looking. The numbers never lie.
Yeah, I love that. That's so, so, so important. And the other thing, at the end of the day, this makes it easier for on your life, because you don't have to spend more time doing something that's not working, not converting, and focus your efforts on something that does. So it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Seems so simple, but it's like, wow. I love it. And so you kind of talked about this one already. You threw this word out there, but your next tip is batching your work. This is a good one. So can you tell us, what does that mean and how does it help?
In the 90s, I remember going to job interviews, and they were like my first out of school graduate job interviews. And I remember them asking, what is your strength? And I picked the two that everybody was using. It was like whatever was in trend, like baggy jeans were in trend. These two things on your job interview were in trend. And they were to say, I'm a perfectionist, because you thought that if you said that you're a perfectionist, that they would love you because you would never mess anything up and that you would try really hard. And the second thing was multitasking. So I would say I'm a great multitasking, which actually means, if you look up the definition, I try to do 19 things at once and just do my best at them. Now, when you do more than one thing at once, you do not do it to your best ability, even if you think you can multitask. So those days of saying women are better multitaskers than men, you don't want to aim to be a multitasker. That's not a good thing. You want to aim to start what you finish. You want to aim to put 100% into a task, then 20% into the 5 tasks that you're doing at the same time. Now, of course, there is a time and place for multitasking. I can be cooking dinner, yelling at my toddler, and checking my email at the same time. That's not the worst thing, but I'm talking about when you sit down at your desk. So batch creating has become a scientifically proven way to increase productivity. And basically what that means is you don't do multiple things at once, but you group together your tasks by likeness. So today, for example, we started this conversation at 9 a.m. Pacific time and 11 a.m. Central time. The rest of my day is actually filled with podcast interviews. So today I'm interviewing people for my podcast. So I have 5 guests that I'm interviewing back to back to back to back. And I'll tell you why. To sit down, get everything ready, get the mics out, the cameras out, the lights out, my notes out, even to sit down and plan out the interviews for all 5 of my guests. I was able to type up a PDF, what time you're coming on the show, what you need to know, what your questions will be in advance, what I'm going to ask you, how I'm going to ask it to you, the link to join, all those things. even the act of creating those 5 PDFs for my guests today was batch creating on the day that I did that, which was last week. And then sitting down today and doing 5 podcast interviews today and 5 tomorrow. I will then have, because this is for your podcast, so I'll have 5 today, 5 tomorrow. That's 10 weeks of podcast episodes. And I did it in 2 days. So now for the next 10 weeks, I don't have to worry about making sure I get a podcast episode out on time. And honestly, that's something that I fail at. When I do it, 1 episode per week, I'm scrambling. I'm always scrambling. I can go 6 weeks without putting out an episode. And I hate that. I hate that for myself and I hate that for my audience, especially those of you who like listening right now, wait for the next episodes. You'd be so mad if Travefy didn't put out an episode. So batch creating, it's like cupcake making. You would never measure out 1/12 of a teaspoon of baking soda for your cupcake because it's stupid. You would just make 12 cupcakes. And even if you have to freeze them and use them later, put them on ice and bring that content down later, batch create your tasks. If you know you're getting in to do your email, just answer emails. If you know you're doing proposals, do all your proposals in an afternoon. If you know you're doing research, do your research in an afternoon. That is definitely going to help you to stay in alignment with your goals because it's productivity based.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Another great analogy for the cupcakes. You wouldn't make just one. You would make as many as you can and freeze them. No, it makes so much sense. And I know one thing, because I've heard this before too, that with, especially with just travel advisors, when they have something come up and sometimes things can happen. Do you have any tips for how they should, like, should they use their calendar and create like little areas like, oh, if a call does come in, you have to deal with flight delay or flight cancel. That's okay. It can move. Like, how do you deal with things like that are unpredictable?
So obviously, a client's need while they are traveling or like in the day or two before they take off is absolutely critical. And you do have to put your things down to fix those issues and to serve those clients. But I really want you to ask yourself, is it urgent? Because if something pops up on our screen like a notification and it says, it's got that subject line, I have no idea what's going on our trip. I'm so confused. The pull that you have to your inbox to open it is really strong, but you know that person's not leaving until next year. You have to really make those decisions and say to yourself, do I need to stop this right now or not? When I'm in that productivity batch creating or quiet time work zone, everything's in do not disturb. So right now, no emails can come through, no messages can pop up on my screen, no notifications. So I really try to honor as best as I can that work block that I have and just check very rarely my notifications. And if something comes up, you don't have to fix it then either. You really need to have that understanding that you can say to someone like, if Scott from Travefy emailed me right now and he's like, hey, I want to talk to you about me coming on your podcast. Well, that's really important to me. But it's not urgent because Scott's not coming on the podcast for a couple of weeks yet. So it's really urgent for him in that moment because he's excited and he's fired up. But that's where I can either ignore Scott. No offense, Scott. I can ignore Scott because Scott's not coming on the podcast for a couple of weeks. Or I can flick back a quick message saying, hey, I'm so excited too. I'll circle back to you by middle of next week with all the details. Can't wait to have you. Move it to the side and keep going with what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. It's so important. Yeah. Just to stay focused. And I know it really can feel a lot of people, especially newer agents or, wanting to be like, I need to respond right away. Oh my gosh. But no one really does that. So it's okay. It's okay. And it actually goes into your final tip really well, which is start saying no. I was going to say, I've heard that one before. We just heard it now. So tell us more about that.
So it's about saying no to a lot of things, but do you know who you need to say no to the most? You're probably thinking the clients that don't want to book the travel I want to sell. No, my friends, you need to learn to say no to yourself first because you are 99.9% of the time the thing that derails your work, that derails your focus, that derails and pulls you, that phrase that you fall off the wagon. Well, that's because you've fallen out of alignment. When you're on the wagon going in the right direction, you're in alignment. So the thing that usually pulls you out of alignment is yourself. It's the Etsy shopping, the Amazon, it's the Facebook, it's the Instagram, it's all the things. And so saying no to yourself and really acknowledging I have a huge opportunity here. You might have friends and family, especially if you have a partner or kids that are supporting you while you do this by giving you the space that you need to do it. And if you're then sitting there on Facebook, and I literally caught myself in this moment recently where my husband had taken our toddler out of the house for a couple of hours so I could get something done. And I found myself on Facebook. And on Facebook, they were talking about this new Netflix series with Toni Collette. And I was like, well, I want to see what that's about. So then I opened it. And then the next thing I know, I was watching the trailer. And then I added it to my short list. And then I texted my husband and said, oh my God, there's a really good new Netflix series we should watch. And I caught myself right after I'd done it and thought, wow, how selfish and how irresponsible. Selfish because everybody else is around me trying to support me to get this work done, and irresponsible because I had a plan. I had a plan that I was going to sit down and do XYZ, and it never got done. So saying no to yourself first and saying, no, you can't check notifications, you can't check email, you can't answer your phone. Question, does your phone even need to be at your desk for the next 60 minutes while you're working on researching itineraries? It probably doesn't. Can you put it in do not disturb mode so that your one or two people that you absolutely would have to hear from, your husband or wife or your kid's school, that would come through? Figure out how to do that. Google, it's a thing. And then going and just putting your phone over to the side and saying out of arm's reach and harm's reach, and saying, I'm not going to have my phone here. I'm going to get started. So saying no to yourself is the first thing. And then after that is saying no to the white noise that comes up around you. So when a travel advisor comes to you and says, you're one of your friends, one of your homie travel advisors, and says, hey, do you want to go on this fam trip? There's, I don't want to pick on sandals. There's an amazing like Yucatan, Mexican kind of this brand new hotel that's opened up, and they've got cenotes and all this, like straight away you're in and you're like, yes, I want to come. Is then sitting back and saying every time, well, the first thing you can answer is, let me take a look at it. Send me some more information and I'll take a look at it. That's got to be your answer every time somebody asks you something. And then sitting down and asking yourself the very first thing, excuse me, is this in alignment with what you need to be doing? It doesn't feel like swimming in cenotes in Mexico is going to help you to sell more river cruises. Might be a great vacation idea with my family, but saying no to the conference that is not what you need. And we'll talk about this next week when I join you all for the webinar about Travefy and travel marketing and media. We're hosting an in-person amazing event in April in San Juan. And I've had a lot of people ask me, I don't know if this is for me. That's a great question. And first thing I said was, well done for asking yourself that question. I don't know if this is for me. So now let's have a look. It's focused on getting more leads and converting more sales and getting more paying clients. Do you need that? And then I remember this woman, Karen, saying, oh yeah, I'm going to go book. Or I remember someone else saying, no, actually my biggest problem right now is that we have way too many bookings. I don't have any staff. I need to bring on more travel advisors. And I'm like, okay, you probably don't want to come to this. It's not for you. Say no and join us next year. So I think it's about saying no to anything that takes your time, your energy, or your money, but that is not in alignment with the goal that you're trying to get to.
I love that. Yep. I'm done the same thing where you just, if one thing leads to another so fast, like one notification or one thought, and you're like, oh, I'm really bad about that too. So I totally get it. And I think it's really important too, because in the travel industry, there's so many opportunities. Like, even we do webinars and stuff, but there's always a webinar to listen to. There's always, something, a destination to get certified in. So it is really important to ask yourself, is this aligning? And it's okay to say no, because you can come back to it later if it works then.
Yeah. And so just one final way on how to implement that. So you might love the Travefy podcast, the listeners. I'm sure you do, because that's why you're listening. You might love the Travel Marketing and Media podcast. So let me put it to you this way. No one's saying don't listen to the podcast anymore because it's not in alignment. What I'm saying is schedule yourself 1 hour to go in, 1 hour, even though their episodes are not normally 1 hour. Schedule yourself, block the time on your calendar and say, you know what, on Wednesday morning, I'm going for a walk. I'm going to do Wednesday walks, and I'm going to go for a walk, and I'm going to listen to a Travefy episode. But instead of listening to the most recent episode, I'm going to ask myself, what do I need? What does my business need? And then I'm going to open my phone, go to iTunes or Google Play or Spotify, and I'm going to search for a podcast on the Travefy list or on the Travel Marketing and Media menu, and I'm going to listen to that particular podcast. That's what we're saying by saying no. It's not saying, no, I'm not going to do any more podcast episodes because I don't have time. Which one do I need that's in alignment with getting me to where I want to go?
Yeah, so important. And going back to the batching, like you mentioned, like batch that time. That's your education learning time. That's just as important. So, yeah, I love that. And before we wrap up, too, I know that you have two awesome and free resources for listeners. So, can you please share those with us?
Yes. So the first one, if you feel like a hamster on a wheel, or you feel like you're just driving around town, hoping you'll end up somewhere good and you don't know what you're doing, go take our quiz. We have an amazing quiz at travelmarketingandmedia.com/quiz. It's free. It is enlightening. If you answer the questions correctly, it's only 15 multiple choice questions, it will diagnose you. It will tell you exactly what you should be focused on as opposed to what you are focused on. And then when you click through even further, it'll give you an action plan of free resources. So and it's kind of spooky because you're like, how do you know that? It's really clever. Go check it out. And then the second thing is head over to Travel Advisor app. Travel Advisor Hub.app, and download our app, Travel Marketing and Media. We have a free app. We're really proud because it's free forever. And it just has a ton of resources on there. And there's, most importantly, communities that you can get into with like-minded travel advisors. So there's a community for all things Disney, a community for family travel, a community for river cruise travel, a community for being in alignment and staying in alignment. So you should probably not join all these other groups. You should probably just join the focus group. But there's like-minded travel advisors in there that you can talk to about anything and everything. There's no suppliers in there. There's no business coaches. There's nobody giving you, it's just like-minded travel advisors. So download the app and take the quiz.
Perfect. That's awesome. And I also want to mention too, so at academy.travefy.com, you can find, I'll link all of this in the show notes, but also next week, so on 31st, Tuesday, January 31st, we are going to have Sandra back in live for a webinar that should not be missed. So go to academy.travefy.com for that information and you can register there. So it's going to be cool.
Yes, I can't wait. We're going to be talking about 5 things that travel advisors in our community are doing right now that are making them enormous amounts of revenue and profit. And they're things that you can do in your business. So we literally just went to the richest travel advisors we know in our community. And we're like, can you just share something? We surveyed them and we took 5 things that they're all doing right now that even if you have no clients at all, you can do those 5 things.
Yeah, it's cool. And I will say too, because I've already gotten a little sneak peek at them and they are good. And they're also kind of, they're all different. So they're not all just like the same thing. You wouldn't even think of some of these. So definitely recommend. It's going to be a really cool webinar. I like it. Okay, so before we go though, so I didn't mention this to you, but we like to do rapid fire questions before we go. They're so fun. So okay, so I'll go through. They're all travel related. So, but they're really fun.
That's my first answer, but no, okay.
Yes, the best. These are so they're all travel related, but just a little different. But they're good. I love this. My favorite part. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so first one. What would you say is your favorite travel movie?
Oh my gosh, favorite travel movie, The Talented Mr. Ripley, not for the storyline, but for the views.
Ooh, nice. I haven't seen that one. I'll have to, I do remember. I can't remember what it's about. So the storyline, but the views. Okay.
Southern Italy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wonderful. Love it. I'm already in. That's great. And what would you say, second question here, is your favorite destination you've traveled to?
Oh my gosh. So I'm a bit of an awful person for this question because I always ask back for what? For food, for shopping.
I know, it's hard.
So I will give quick ones. For history, definitely Russia. I've spent a lot of time in Russia and I absolutely love it. For food, Hong Kong. And second tie, Singapore are my favorites for food.
Oh, that's really cool. That's awesome.
And that's all that matters, shopping and food.
Yeah, I know. All you need in life. It's perfect. So a little spin to that question is, what do you think is the most underrated destination to visit?
Oh, wow. I think it's not necessarily the most underrated destination. It's the most underrated type of travel that is. So I'm going to spin the question back to better fit. And it's anything with authentic experiences. So that means trading out the banana boat ride in Los Cabos for doing a farm to table cooking class. Or it means going and doing a local sculpture or painting class, or watching a tango class in Buenos Aires, something like that. So I think for me, it's not really the destination. For me, the most underrated type of travel is the authentic experiences that connect you with the people and the culture, so that when you go back, you actually know something about where you went.
Oh, that's a really good answer. That's like one of the best ones to that. It's so smart. Yeah. You did it. Yes. Yeah, that is excellent. I love that response. So okay, and you kind of mentioned this a little bit at the meal, but what would you say is the best meal you've had while traveling? And it can be a cuisine because I know that's really hard too.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so unfortunately, Russia, the food award does not go to you except for blints, the little pancakes. Didn't like Russian food. I really do, and I know it's so cliche, but I love Asian food and I love Italian food. I think my favorite destination for food is Vietnam.
Oh, cool. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it just felt really light, which meant that I could eat a lot of it. It felt really healthy, which meant that I could eat a
Mhm.
lot of it. And it was a lot
Exactly.
of fresh produce and it was very clean eating. And it was the first destination I ever went to that I ate my way through the entire country and didn't put on weight. But one of the things that I loved was I didn't see a single McDonald's when I was there. I didn't see a single Starbucks when I was there. I ate Vietnamese food 100% of my meals.
That's awesome. I love that. Light, fresh, eat.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Perfect. So another question here is what is the last great book or article that you read?
Oh my gosh, the last great book. How embarrassing. I'm in my office and there's not a single book to be found. So the last great article I read was actually about the concept of social media and how it is fighting for your attention, and it kind of is a extension of that Netflix The Social Dilemma and
Yeah.
how that works, which is frighteningly amazing. When you watch that documentary, I definitely recommend it. But I read an article the other day and it had a matching video to it saying that hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, countries would colonize each other to make money. So they would take one country would take over another country. And because there's no more land left in the world, it is now the job of whoever wants to be powerful to colonize our minds. And so social media is a very strong tool to be able to do that. And it's just about being aware of the amount of time that you give to social, the amount of information that you give to social, and just still maintaining a balanced life outside of social media.
That is
Really
great. Yeah,
deep.
I
I'm
was
so sorry. It's so deep.
I know, but it's good to be aware because
It's
we are entering, yeah, I mean, we're entering a spot that no humankind has not been before.
yeah.
So,
We've
yeah.
lived in every country, every land has been inhabited. So now what? The mind.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Mind
Yeah.
blown right now. Um so um I know like but yeah, I thought of that documentary too when you said that. It's really important to watch. It's good. But okay, so last question here is this is my favorite one is what is the craziest thing that's ever happened to you while traveling?
Oh, it's not a good thing, but it is a
That's
crazy
okay.
thing.
I get good and bad, so it's cool.
Okay, it's definitely not a good thing. This is not something that I'm like, I need like a disclaimer on the bottom of the screen, like a don't try this from home. This is not a goal. This is not a travel goal. When I was, I want to say in my 20s, I flew from London, where I was living and working in the travel industry, to Venezuela, to Caracas with three friends. And while we were in the air, Venezuela shut the country down and went into a huge big coup, and all the flights were grounded. No one could come in, but we were too close to Venezuela for our British Airways flight to be turned back. So we basically landed, and there were like hotels being bombed in the city, and there was all kinds of craziness. We left Caracas immediately because it probably wasn't safe before that happened, let alone during that. We tried to go to our hotel, and the hotel literally had been bombed. So we left town and we went down to Merida, which is in the mountains just at the foot of the Andes. And again, not overly safe, but we did find an ice cream store that sold 175 flavors of ice cream. I will never ever ask for ham and cheese ice cream ever again. So that was the weirdest experience I've ever had traveling, because we landed in what was about to become almost like a war-torn area. And it just happened to be that we were on the plane. And when they made the announcement, I was the only one in our group who spoke Spanish. And my friends were like, oh, people look upset. Did someone die? And I'm like, ish. And so, yeah, that was my craziest experience. And it was just because the flight was too far in to turn around or land anywhere else. So they dropped us off. And we were the only tourists on board, which probably should have told you something as well.
Oh my gosh. Well, and how'd you get back? Oh my
We
gosh.
we stayed there and we found really quiet places to hang out, like beach resorts and places that are just not affected. And we stayed for the full 3 weeks, and then we came back because there were also no flights heading back to London either.
Mm.
So we would have had to have gone to Colombia and then come but sometimes one wrong doesn't make another wrong right. So we're like, let's not go to Colombia and cross over that mountain range. Let's just stay here by the beach in a quiet place. And then we went back 3 weeks later.
Wow, that is crazy. Definitely one of the craziest ones we've heard. That's like,
I got lots from all of our travel filming and TV shows, but that's one of my craziest ones.
I know. I was going to say, I like really want to have an episode where we just talk about traveling with Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm lost for words already. Yeah.
Maybe that's okay. That will be our bonus coming up at some point. Everyone look out for that. I will be pumped. But I just want to thank you so much again. And thanks everyone for tuning into this episode of the Lounge of Travefy Academy. And of course, to our special guest, Sandra, for joining us here today. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast or subscribe to our YouTube channel for all of the latest episodes. And we hope you enjoyed our conversation today and join us again. But for now, stay safe and we'll catch you on the next flight.